Imagine a little boy in Brooklyn, barely old enough to tie his shoes, watching his father's life end in a flash of rage. A girlfriend's knife, blood pooling on a stranger's floor. That was Eddie Murphy's first memory of loss. His dad, Charles, estranged from Mom Lillian, gone forever. The kind of trauma that could have shattered a kid. But Eddie? He turned it into rocket fuel. Fast forward 5 decades. The same boy, now 64, silver at the temples, sits in a sun-drenched LA mansion, 10 kids' laughter echoing off marble. He's dodged every Hollywood curse. The drugs that swallowed Belushi, the flops that buried careers, the critics who sharpened knives. How? One sentence, delivered with that trademark grin. I've always loved myself. Always been my biggest fan. Next year marks 50 years since a cocky teen convinced New York comedy clubs he was the second coming. 50 years of box office dynasties, Oscar nods, and secret burials for fallen heroes. 50 years of raising a small village of children who all turned out decent. And now, for the first time, Eddie opens the fortress doors in Netflix's Being Eddie. Inside, the stepdad who saved him, the brother who broke him, the self-love that shielded him from the abyss. This isn't another comeback story. It's the blueprint for surviving the unsurvivable. Buckle up. The ride starts with a scream and ends with a dynasty. Picture this: a cramped Brooklyn apartment, the kind where walls soak up every argument. Little Eddie, maybe 3 or 4, presses his ear to a bedroom door. Inside, his parents, Charles and Lillian, are tearing each other apart. Screams, slams. The air thick with grown-up fury. That's the earliest reel in Eddie's mental film. Then silence. Charles walks out. Never comes back the same. Years later, the phone rings. Charles is dead. Stabbed to death by a girlfriend in a fight that turned fatal in seconds. Police reports paint a chaotic scene. Jealousy, rage, a blade. Eddie's only a kid, but the image brands itself. Blood, sirens, a father he barely knew, now a ghost. I'm sure it affected me a bunch of different ways, he says in the new Netflix doc, voice low, eyes distant. Trauma doesn't knock. It kicks the door down and redecorates your soul. Mom Lillian, heartbroken but unbreakable, remarries. Enter Vernon Lynch Sr., a quiet giant with a steady hand. Vernon steps into the void Charles left, teaching a wounded boy what a man could be. By the grace of God, Eddie says, my mother married an amazing, solid man who put all the right S in me. No exaggeration. Vernon's lessons became armor. Where some kids crumble under early loss, Eddie learned to stand taller. The pain didn't vanish, it transmuted. Became fuel. Became the unshakable core that let a teenager look in the mirror and declare, I'm the star of my own DMN movie. That core carried him from Brooklyn stoops to comedy stages. But the scar never faded. It just powered the laugh. And what happened when that laugh hit the world? Pure detonation. By 15, Eddie Murphy wasn't just funny. He was a walking impersonation factory. Picture a lanky Brooklyn teen at the dinner table, twisting his face into Richard Pryor, then Bill Cosby, then the corner bodega guy, until the whole family howled. Classmates begged for encores. Teachers, they just tried to keep up. Eddie didn't see a hobby. He saw destiny. I'm gonna be a star, he told anyone who'd listen. Most laughed. He wasn't joking. Local talent shows became his lab. He'd storm the stage, drop a perfect James Brown squeal, and own the room before the mic warmed up. Word spread fast. New York's comedy clubs, hungry, smoky, unforgiving, started buzzing about the kid who could steal the show in 30 seconds flat. One night at the comic strip, a scout from Saturday Night Live caught the act. Eddie was 19, barely old enough to vote, already too big for open mics. SNL in 1980 was a pressure cooker. Legends like Belushi and Aykroyd had just bolted. The show teetered. Producers needed lightning. They got a thunderstorm. Eddie's first sketch? He played a convict preaching to kids about staying in school. Deadpan, electric, impossible to look away from. Ratings spiked. Overnight, he wasn't the new guy. He was the guy. Arsenio Hall, years later on the Coming to America set, still felt the aftershock. Very intimidating, he told people. Murphy was him, the new sheriff in town. Eddie didn't just raise the bar, He snapped it over his knee and used the splinters to build a throne. Stand-up specials followed. Delirious dropped in 83, raw and fearless, cementing him as comedy's crown prince. Hollywood smelled blood in the water, and when the call came, Eddie didn't walk through the door. He kicked it down, 1982. D8 Hussars hits theaters like a freight train. Eddie, 21, trades barbs with Nick Nolte and walks away with the movie. Critics blink. Audiences scream. The kid from SNL just rewrote the action comedy playbook. 1 year later, Trading Places flips Wall Street upside down. Eddie and Dan Aykroyd in a masterclass of hustle and hilarity. Box office? Obliterated. Then Beverly Hills Cop drops in, 84. Axel Foley's laugh becomes a global ringtone. $300 million later, Eddie isn't a star. He's a dynasty. Hollywood throws money like confetti. Eddie catches it mid-air and turns it into gold. Coming to America lets him play 4 characters in one frame. Prince, barber, soul singer, old Jewish guy, each sharper than the last. The Nutty Professor in 96? 7 roles, prosthetic wizardry, and 1 billion laughs. He's not acting anymore. He's shape-shifting. Dreamgirls in 2006 silences doubters. An Oscar nod for a supporting role that rips your heart out. Dolomite Is My Name in 2019? A love letter to blaxploitation that reminds everyone the crown still fits, but crowns weigh tons. For every Shrek voice gig that prints money, there's a script that should have stayed in the drawer. Eddie knows it. No one sets out to make a bad movie, he says in the doc, half smile hiding the sting. The flops are coming, and when they land, the knives come out faster than the laughs ever did. 1995. Vampire in Brooklyn slinks into theaters and faceplants hard. Critics tear it apart like cheap garlic bread. Eddie, the untouchable, suddenly looks mortal. The sting is sharp, but nothing prepares him for the next blow. Saturday Night Live, his launchpad, turns executioner. David Spade smirks into the camera on Hollywood Minute. Look, children, it's a falling star. Eddie's grimacing face plastered beside the jab. The studio audience roars. Eddie? He feels the blade twist. He swears off 30 Rock. 35 years. No guest spots, no cameos. Not even a wave from the hallway. That hurt, he admits in Being Eddie, voice flat. The place that made him now mocks him. Hollywood's memory is short, but grudges, eternal. Eddie buries the pain under work, under family, under silence. The world moves on. He doesn't. Then 2019 flips the script. Lorne Michaels calls. Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Tracy Morgan, ready to flank him like comedy cavalry. Eddie steps back onto the SNL stage for the first time since Reagan. The monologue? A masterclass in owning your scars. Sketches with the kings who grew up worshipping him. The crowd loses its mind. Eddie calls it full circle. You see your impact, he says, eyes gleaming. The hatchet? Buried under applause. But some wounds never close. They just teach you where to build thicker walls. And Eddie's next walls would be made of something Hollywood can't touch. Loyalty, grief, and a brotherhood 6 feet deep. Red Fox died broke in 91, heart giving out on a royal family set. Eddie quietly wrote the check for the funeral. No headlines, no cameras, just respect for the man who paved the road. Rick James followed in 04, body wrecked by years of excess. Eddie paid again. Buckwheat from Our Gang, real name William Thomas, past forgotten. Eddie bought the tombstone. When Red kicked out, I had to bury Red, he says in the doc, voice steady but eyes far away. These weren't charity cases. They were brothers in punchlines, ghosts he refused to let fade. Then the deepest cut. Charlie Murphy, Eddie's big brother, the original cool. Leukemia crept in silent, took him at 57 in 2017. Charlie, who stole scenes on Chappelle's show, who ribbed Eddie mercilessly at family barbecues, gone. In Being Eddie, the camera catches the only crack in the armor. Eddie's face folds, voice drops to a whisper. We're shaped by that stuff, he says, meaning every syllable. Charlie's laugh used to fill rooms. Now it echoes in memory. Eddie funded the burial, of course. But money can't buy back a brother. It can only buy dignity for the fallen. And for the living, it buys perspective. 10 kids, 1 mansion, 1 life left to protect. The next chapter wouldn't be about surviving Hollywood. It would be about building a fortress no critic could touch. 10 kids. Not a plan, just gravity. First came 5 with Nicole Mitchell, Bria, Miles, Shane, Zola, Bella. 13 years of marriage, then divorce in 2006. Clean split, messy headlines. Eddie didn't pause. Life kept dropping miracles. A son with Melanie Brown, Spice Girl drama, paternity tests, headlines screaming. A daughter with Tamara Hood, another son with Paulette McNeely. Then Paige Butcher walked in, Australian, gorgeous, calm in the storm. 2 more. Izzy in 2016, Max in 2018. Ages now? 6 to 36. A full-blown dynasty. It just happened. Eddie shrugs in the dock, sprawled on a couch that probably costs more than a house. If you can afford that many kids, have as many as you can. Money's the easy part. The flex? They're all decent people. Not one rotten one. No arrests, no scandals, no tabloid train wrecks. In Hollywood, that's witchcraft. Eric, the eldest, just married Martin Lawrence's daughter Jasmine in a comedy royalty merger that melted the internet. 2 legends, 1 altar, 0 drama. Cameras roll inside the LA mansion for the first time. Marble floors, grandchildren sprinting, Paige laughing in the kitchen. Eddie watches like a king surveying his realm. My children got some of that from me, he says, pride thick. The Brooklyn boy who lost a father built a village, and the village built him back. But the real fortress, it's not the gates or the guards, it's the secret he's carried since day one, the one that kept the darkness from swallowing him whole. The gates swing open. For the first time ever, Netflix cameras step inside Eddie's LA fortress, storybook mansion, marble glinting under California sun. Paige Butcher glides through frame, kids' artwork on the fridge, grandchildren tearing down hallways like tiny tornadoes. No bodyguards in sight, just family, just Eddie, barefoot in jeans, grinning like the world can't touch him. Being Eddie isn't a highlight reel, it's a confession booth with better lighting. He walks viewers past framed posters, 48H's Nutty Professor, past gold records, past the quiet corner where he wrote jokes at 3 a.m. Then the bombshell. I've always loved myself. Always been my biggest fan. Not ego. Armor. The same self-love that let him say no when Hollywood offered the needle, the bottle, the spiral that swallowed Belushi, Pryor, so many others. Most people don't get 50 years, he says, voice steady. I shielded myself from the pitfalls. Cut to the rawest moment. Charlie's grave. Eddie stands alone, wind whipping his jacket. No dialogue, just silence thick enough to choke on. Then back to the mansion, laughter flooding the void. The doc ends on a single line, whispered like a secret. Being Eddie is a great thing. Not fame. Not money. Just Eddie, the boy who survived Brooklyn blood, built an empire, buried his heroes, raised a village. Still standing, still laughing, and the final question hangs in the air. After 50 years, what's left to conquer? 50 years, from a Brooklyn kid dodging ghosts to a silver-haired king surrounded by 10 miracles. Eddie Murphy didn't just survive Hollywood. He rewrote the rules with a grin and a middle finger to doubt. Self-love wasn't his brand. It was his shield, against murder's echo, against Spade's smirk, against the graves he paid for in silence, against every script that bombed and every headline that lied. Now the mansion doors close, Netflix credits roll, and Eddie leans back, Paige's hand in his, grandkids plotting chaos in the next room. Just being Eddie, he says, eyes soft. There's so much to be happy about. Humble beginnings to dynasty. Trauma to triumph. One man, one laugh, one unbreakable core. But here's the twist that'll haunt you. The doc ends, yet the story doesn't. 50 years was just the warm-up. What happens when the king writes his next chapter? A new stand-up special? A drama that breaks him open? Or simply more mornings watching his village grow? Drop your wildest guess in the comments. Smash subscribe, because the loudest laugh might still be coming. And when it hits, you'll want front row seats.